I love playing games. I have always enjoyed watching playthroughs, and during the last couple of years, I also became interested in recording my own playthroughs. And at some point, I thought it would be really interesting to combine these two things. Not just to play other people's games, but to make my own game and show how it slowly appears step by step. This project is exactly about that. I'm making a sandbox with a living world where many things should happen not because I scripted and I seen in advance, but because the world itself, the characters and their interactions create events. What interests me here is the idea itself, a large, modular, connected world where things have causes and consequences. A world that can grow over time, become more complex, and one day reach the point where I will not just test separate systems, but actually play it. In this video, I want to show what this project is, how I see it, what is already done, and where it's going. To explain it in the simplest way, this is a sandbox, but not as one fixed game with only one scenario and only one way to play. It's more like a system, a base, where very different game sessions can be built. Visually, in terms of scene readability and world presentation, something in the spirit of RimWorld. But what I care about here is not copying someone else's solution. What I care about is my own living world and its inner logic. The world will be simulated as a whole, without separate locations that the player switches between. So this is not a game where now we are in this room, now in this zone, now in this mission. It is one big world that exists as one connected system. Right now I am targeting a map size up to 32 by 32 kilometers. Of course, the player does not see all of that at once. The player observes the world through a limited window, roughly about 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, but the world itself is still simulated as one whole thing, and modularity is very important to me here. I don't want to lock the project in advance as only a colony game, only a survival game, or only a squad game. I want the same base to support very different scenarios. For example, it can be a session where you control one character directly and just try to survive in the world. Or it can be a more colony-like scenario, where you set priorities, jobs, schedules, and develop a settlement. In that case, the control is indirect. Or it can be a story about a group of mercenaries moving through the world and living by its rules. You can add zombie modules. You can focus on wildlife, animals, lack of resources, heat, cold, and logistics. And if it makes sense, you can even add more fantastic things. The same applies to the world itself. There are basic surfaces types, but on top of them there can be extra states: snow, ice, flood, ash, acid, and other things, if they are defined by a specific game session module. I like the idea of not having one fixed game set in stone. I like the idea of a system where the same world can support different ways to play and very different moods. As for me, probably the most important part of the project is not just a set of mechanics. It is what the world should be like in meaning. I don't want the game to be built mainly on scripted events like this scene always happens here, this quest is always here, and this NPC waits for you forever until you finally decide to come. Of course, there will be events, but I want them to come first of all from the state of the world, from interactions between characters, from causes and consequences, not from a hard-coded script that always forces the same thing. One very important principle for me is this: the player should not be the center of the universe. The player is not some special creature for whom the whole world freezes and starts spinning around him. The player is just another participant in the same system, like other characters in the world. So the world can have other adventurers, farmers, warriors, traders, hunters, and just people who live their own lives. They do not exist only to give the player a line of dialogue or a function at the right moment. They are part of the simulation themselves. And from this comes another important point. The world should not wait for the player forever. If you took a task from someone, it does not mean that this task must stay there for 100 years just because you clicked on it once. If you wait too long, the character may find someone else to do it. I want this to feel not like the game is punished the player, but like the natural logic of the world. People have their own goals, their own deadlines, their own problems. The same goes for information. I don't want information to spread instantly and magically. If something happens somewhere, it does not mean that 1 second later the whole map knows about it. Someone must see it, hear it, tell someone, remember it, connect the facts. For example, if you attack a guard and nobody saw it, and the guard did not manage to raise the alarm, then the world should not immediately give the correct answer to everyone around. After that, indirect signs can start to matter. Rumors, character memory, guesses, suspicion, and this is exactly what I like. I want the story to grow not from above as a script, but from below, from the simulation of the world itself. I generally like the idea of a game that can be interesting to different people, while still having the same base. For example, some people like building colonies, managing a settlement, giving tasks, and watching how everything slowly starts working as a system. Some people prefer calmer scenarios, with less focus on conflict and more focus on development, economy, logistics, almost farm life. And some people, on the opposite side, prefer hard survival, pressure from the environment, lack of resources, dangerous creatures, and constant risk. Some people want a squad, some people want one character, some people want a colony, and I think it's very interesting not to choose only one of these forever, but to build the world in such a way that different scenarios can exist inside it. Also, hard survival does not have to happen only in a grey, dark, gloomy world under rain. It can happen on a sunny coast, in beautiful nature, in a bright-looking environment. A beautiful world does not have to be simple or safe. Another reason why I like this project is the combination of system logic and a feeling of life. I like the thought that a game can be not just a set of mechanics, but an environment where life is actually felt. Someone is walking somewhere, Someone is doing something, someone reacts to something, something has consequences, something changes with time, something disappears, something appears. And I really like that this project can be shown step by step. I don't have to wait for some distant mythical moment when everything is perfect. I can show again and again how separate systems slowly start forming a world. Maybe this is one of the most pleasant parts of the whole idea. Not just making a game in a vacuum, but watching how step by step it becomes something whole. Now, let's talk about the more practical part. What is already done at this point? Right now, I already have a draft version of the map generator. The base of the world is built from a height map and a surface map with water taken into account. So this is no longer just an abstract idea in my head. It is a real technical foundation that I can continue working with. I can show different generated maps both as PNG images and directly in the build. And this is useful not only visually, it is also useful as a design step because on these maps it is easy to see where the world is going in terms of shape, terrain, water, coastlines, and the general feeling of the landscape. Besides that, local pathfinding is already done, so basic navigation at the local level already works. This is an important part because without it, it is very hard to move toward a living world with the real creatures. At the same time, hierarchical pathfinding is being prepared. It is needed for a larger scale navigation across the big world. Local pathfinding is responsible for movement inside a nearby area. Hierarchical pathfinding is needed so the system can think about longer movement not as chaos but as a structure. And even though visually the project is still very early, it is important to me that the fundamental parts are already starting to fall into place. Another big part of the foundation is performance. From the very beginning, I assume that this world should not exist only as a teeny demo for a beautiful idea. There should be many entities in it, and the whole approach must handle scale. That is why the project is being built from the start with performance in mind, including entity component system architecture. This is important because if the world is supposed to have up to 10,000 humanoid NPCs in the future, not counting animals, then this cannot be postponed until later. You cannot just hope that it will somehow work by itself. Architecture here is not a secondary topic, it is part of the idea of the world itself. A separate big layer of the project is characters and their behavior. At the start, the world will most likely be populated gradually. First, there will be simpler forms of life, plants and trees. Then, rabbits and wolves, as the first living creatures where I can test basic causality, movement, simple behavior, and interaction with the environment. And after that, more complex NPCs can be added step by step. For their behavior, I don't want to rely on one big magic AI that supposedly solves everything. I'm more interested in splitting it into several layers. The first layer is the utility engine. It is needed to evaluate needs, task importance, priorities, and what matters most to the characters right now. The second layer is a behavior tree. This is about concrete sequences of actions, transitions, branches, and the structure of how the character acts depending on context. And the third layer is the emotion engine. It is needed so characters are not completely sterile and identical in every situation. Their behavior should be affected by mood, emotions, emotional state, and reaction to what is happening. What personality and mood? I want to use several models as a base. Plutchik's wheel of emotions, ocean, and pad. This doesn't mean that I want to lock all behavior inside a psychology textbook. It is more like a useful set of supports. They help me think about a character not just as a script, but as being with personality, tendencies, and state. And here, the visual layer is also very important to me. If characters are supposed to have emotions, personality, state, and reactions, I want at least some of that to be visible. That is why I don't want the pawns in my game to be completely abstract markers. I want them to look like characters with faces, eyes, eyebrows, nose, mouth, so emotions can be read, at least a little. Yes, on the way to that, there have already been some very questionable intermediate results. Some early phase drafts look less like people living in a world and more like the result of a failed experiment. But honestly, that is also a normal part of the process. The main thing is not that I already have the perfect visual style right now. The main thing is that the direction itself is important to me. Characters should feel like living beings, not just icons on the map. Besides the big ideas about the world and AI, I also care about more grounded system rules. These rules are what make the world feel not like a set of convenient game shortcuts, but like an environment that works by its own internal logic. First, inventory. Each character should have their own carrying volume, carrying capacity, backpack, pockets, and equipment. I don't want items to turn into an endless magic list. Weight and volume should matter because they affect survival, trade, loot, movement, and the decisions a character makes. Second, skills. I'm not interested in the system where a character simply gains abstract experience and then spends it anywhere. It feels much more logical if a character improves in what they actually do. You practice a skill, you get better. You don't use it for a long time, it slowly gets worse. Then character development is connected not to a level up menu, but to the real life of the character in the world. Third, knowledge. Some abilities should not appear automatically. A character can learn them from a book, from a teacher, through training, or from someone else's experience. For example, some action sequences or behavior tree subtrees can first be learned, understood, and only then used. I like the idea that knowledge in the world can be passed on, spread, forgotten, and lost. And one more important topic is crafting through item properties. Not by the rule this recipe strictly requires an item named hammer, but by function. To hammer a nail, you need a hard striking surface. And if an item has a property, it can potentially work. To cut bread, you do not necessarily need the exact knife from the recipe. You need any item with a cutting edge. This approach makes the system more flexible and more logical. The world starts to work not as a set of strict recipes and exceptions, but as a space of items, properties, knowledge, skills, and limits. For a modular sandbox, this is especially important. Another important layer for me is a large-scale causality in the world. After a game session starts, I don't want ordinary people, animals, and plants to simply appear out of thin air. Ordinary NPCs and animals should appear in a logical way, mainly through birth. Plants should also have their own cycle. They grow, reproduce, recover, or disappear. There can be exceptions for fantasy creatures if a specific module defines them. But the basic logic of the world should be causal, not magical. This also leads to the ecosystem. For example, if all rabbits are killed, it should be not just be the removal of one unit type from a table. It should affect predators, plants, the balance of the environment, and the behavior of other creatures. I am interested in the world not as a set of separate objects, but as a system of connections. And another example of this causality is roads. I like the idea that a path can appear literally from the life of the world. If characters walked through the same place for a long time, grass and soil slowly become trampled, and then a natural path appears. If nobody uses the path anymore, it can overgrow and disappear. Even artificial roads do not have to be eternal. They can wear out, degrade, and eventually give way to something new. Things like this create the feeling that the world is not just drawn, but actually lives. If we talk about what I especially want to develop next, then first of all, it's the movement from the foundation toward more living parts of the world. There are already basic things to build on: map generation, pathfinding, and the architectural base. And now it is especially interesting to slowly bring all of this to the point where the world starts not just to exist as a separate pieces, but to actually come alive. I want to put the first creatures into the world and see how causal connections start working not in theory, but in real examples. How plants live, how animals move, how they interact with the environment, how the first simple chains of behavior start to appear. I want to slowly bring the world to the state where I can look not only at one separate mechanic, but at how mechanics start mixing with each other and creating something interesting. I want to improve characters, their behavior, memory, emotional states, and facial expressions. I want NPCs to stop being test objects and become beings that are actually interesting to watch. And in general, probably the main next step for me is this: to make the project feel less and less like a set of separate engineering parts, and more like a world where you can already imagine a real game session. So, this was my first detailed talk about this project, about what kind of game it is, how I see it, and what it is built on for me. Of course, it is still an early stage, but even now it is important to me that the project already has a character, clear principles, and a foundation I can build on. This is a sandbox where the living world itself is what interests me most. A world where events grow from the state of the system. A world where characters don't exist only for the player. A world where many things should be connected by cause and effect, not just be decorative. And I really like the thought that all of this can not only be developed but also shown step by step. I can watch how a map, generation, navigation, behavior, and other separate systems slowly start becoming something whole. So, I will continue from time to time to show how this world develops. What works well, what works badly, what has to be remade, and what suddenly starts working even better than expected. And probably one of the most pleasant thoughts here is still the same. One day, all of this will be something I can not only develop and discuss, but actually play. And then I will be able to record playthroughs not of someone else's game, but of my own. Thank you very much for your attention and see you later.